6:45. This is the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. The news edited by Lal Malarachi and read by Lavani Vijayatunga. First, we take a look at the headlines. The Registrar General of Pest Control vehemently rejects the newspaper reports published recently that stocks of toxic rice have been imported to Sri Lanka. The government has declared tomorrow a day of mourning and a public holiday in view of Queen Elizabeth II's state funeral. Local government elections to be held before the 20th of March next year. Ownerless stray cattle are to be captured and handed over to NLDB farms. And in news overseas, Prince William and Harry lead historic coffin vigil. And in sports news, Cricket India to introduce tactical substitutions inside Mustaq Ali Trophy T20 next month. Those were the headlines, and now let's move on to the details of the local news. Acting Registrar of Pesticides, Lasantha Ratnavira vehemently rejects newspaper reports published recently that stocks of toxic rice have been imported to Sri Lanka. The news published in two Sunday newspapers claiming that poisonous rice is imported to Sri Lanka is completely false and baseless. He said that no such research as claimed in the news articles have been conducted by the Office of the Registrar of Pesticides since January this year. Mr. Ratnavira said that the relevant newspapers have prepared the news using a report related to a research conducted in the year 2017, but even so, the contents are also flawed. The acting registrar of pesticides further stated that the publication of such false news could lead to public unrest. Therefore, he has said it is prudent to verify such news from the relevant parties when reporting such sensitive matters. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Trade is to log a complaint to the CID regarding the newspapers that publish baseless reports to instill fear in consumers. The state funeral of Queen Elizabeth II will take place at Westminster Abbey at 11 a.m. UK time tomorrow. A large number of heads of states are due to attend the funeral. President Ranil Wickremesinghe has left for London last morning to attend the funeral. President Wickremesinghe visited the British High Commission and signed the condolence book last Sunday. Meanwhile, the government has declared tomorrow a day of mourning and a public holiday in view of Queen Elizabeth II's state funeral. Secretary to the Ministry of Public Administration, MMC Kimayaduna, says that the heads of state institutions should make arrangements to maintain essential services unhindered. The Elections Commission says that it is expected to hold an election before the 20th of March next year. Chairman of the Elections Commission, Nimalji Punchihevan, states that according to the local authorities' elections ordinance, the Commission will have the authority regarding the election polling after the 30th of September. He said the local government elections have been postponed by a year. However, one of the requests of the Selection Committee on Elections is that the Commission should have the power that it is yielded by the Minister. The voters list of the year 2022 is expected to be certified on the 31st of October, while the supplementary list is expected to be certified on the 11th of November, the Elections Commission said. This is the news from the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. And we continue with more local news. The Commissioner General of Examinations, LMD Dharmasena, says that there will be no change in the scheduled dates of the Grade 5 Scholarship Examination and the GC Advanced Level Examinations. In an announcement, the Examination Department has notified that exams will be held in parallel with the school schedule for the year 2022. Accordingly, Grade 5 Scholarship Examinations will be held on the 4th of December as previously planned. The Commissioner General of Examination further stated that the GC Advanced Level Examination will be held from the 5th of December to the 2nd of January. The Commissioner General of Examinations additionally informed that all candidates should be ready to appear for the examinations on the relevant dates. The Wildlife Department has decided to capture ownerless stray cattle and hand them over to the NLDB farms. Due to the lack of pasture, the buffaloes and cows have been released to sanctuaries and the national forests like Yala, Vilpattu, Lunagambhera, Udavalave and Kabelitta. However, the Wildlife Department says that due to the livestock grazing in the forest, there is a lack of food for other wild animals, and the situation has even made the wild elephants to invade their village for food. It was revealed that many people engaged in cattle rearing in the eastern and northern provinces have released their herds of cattle into national forests and sanctuaries due to lack of grazing land. And to conclude the local news, let's get back to the headlines once again. The Registrar General of Pest Control vehemently rejects newspaper reports published recently that stocks of toxic rice have been imported to Sri Lanka. The government has declared tomorrow a day of mourning and a public holiday in view of Queen Elizabeth II's state funeral. Local government elections to be held before the 20th of March next year. Ownerless stray cattle are to be captured and handed over to NLDP farms. And that was the local news.
The main news story is brought to you by Siddhalepa Vedamahatmya.
The main news story for this morning, Minister Bandula Gunawardena says that Sri Lankan authorities continued the negotiations with Russia on the provision of loan to buy Russian fuel. The minister said that Sri Lanka can manage the problem because the country is now slowly recovering from the economic crisis and foreign exchange crisis. The government wishes to get some big support from Russia. The discussion is ongoing very well. And that was the main news story.
The main news story was brought to you by Siddhalepa Vedamahatmya.
Let's move on to Watchlight this morning. The National Dengue Control Unit says there has been an increase in dengue cases reported in the country so far this year compared to the figures of the previous year. In a statement, the unit stated that by the 36th week of this year, a total of 55,012 dengue cases have been reported in Sri Lanka. The health authorities request the public to keep their house premises free of mosquito breeding places. That came to you in Watchlight, and now let's move on to the headlines of the world news. Princes William and Harry lead historic coffin vigil. Mass exhumations at Izum Forest grave site. India's Prime Minister reintroduces extinct cheetahs on his birthday. Those were the headlines, and now let's move on to the details of the world news. The Queen's 8 grandchildren, including Prince of Wales and the Duke of Sussex, have stood vigil around her coffin as she lies in the state at Westminster Hall. At the King Charles' request, Prince Harry wore military uniform for the first time since the year 2020. Prince Harry has worn civilian clothes at public events since the Queen died. This is the first time in history that the grandchildren of a monarch have taken part in a ceremony. In a pine forest at the edge of Izum, the stretch of death filled the air as a mass exhumation got underway. The earth is giving up its secrets. Ukrainian officials believe war crimes have been committed, which they are determined to document. Around 100 Ukrainian emergency service workers wearing blue plastic coverings dug into the earth, opening makeshift graves. They are trying to establish the cause of hundreds of deaths of people buried in a forest at the edge of the city, recently liberated by the advancing Ukrainian forces. Cheetahs are said to roam in India for the first time since they were declared officially extinct in the year 1952. A group of 8 cats arrived from Namibia on the occasion of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's birthday yesterday. They will undergo a month-long quarantine before being released in the national park in central India. Cheetahs formerly shared the jungles with other big cats like the lions and tigers, but disappeared 70 years ago. To end the World Bulletin, let's get back to the headlines once again. Princes William and Harry lead historic coffin vigil. Mass exhumations at Izum Forest grave site. Indian Prime Minister reintroduces extinct cheetahs on his birthday. That was the world news, and now let's get on to the development news. The government of Japan has decided to provide $3.5 million to Sri Lanka. It will be given as an additional emergency aid package through the World Food Programme, the International Red Cross and the United Nations Fund. That was the development news.
Sports News is brought to you by...
With many values that bind us beyond the transaction, we are Sampath Bank. We present your future.
Moving on to sports news, the BCCI is set to introduce tactical substitutes in the upcoming season of its domestic men's T20 tournament, the Syed Mushtaq Ali Trophy, which will begin on the 11th of October. In an email sent to its state associations, the BCCI has elaborated on the concept of its impact player rule, which will allow teams to use one tactical substitute in each match. ESPN Cricket 4 has learned that the BCCI has been able to introduce the tactical substitutes in the IPL for the past few years, but has decided it would be prudent to implement it in the Mushtaq Ali Trophy first. If it works smoothly, the impact player substitute will feature in the IPL for the year 2023. That was the sports news, business news coming up.
The fastest way to earn the highest interest from NSB, now extended till the 30th of September just for you. Your short-term deposits receive an attractive interest rate of 20% in 3 months and 22% in 7 months. Visit a bank branch or a main postal office today. NSB, the only bank with 100% government guarantee.
Business News, sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
Sri Lanka's average coconut prices fell 5.1% to 58,155 rupees for 1,000 nuts at the last auction held last Thursday, official data show. The highest price was 65,800 rupees for 1,000 nuts, down from 74,200 rupees. The lowest price was 50,000 rupees, down from 51,500 rupees at the auction conducted by Sri Lanka's Coconut Development Authority. Buyers offered 832,000 nuts at the auction and sold 455,000. Exports of coconut-based products have risen by 8% in January to July this year. And that was the business news. Economic news follows.
Business News, sponsored by
The fastest way to earn the highest interest from NSB, now extended till the 30th of September just for you. Your short-term deposits receive an attractive interest rate of 20% in 3 months and 22% in 7 months. Visit a bank branch or a main postal office today. NSB, the only bank with 100% government guarantee.
Moving on to economic news, 3 institutions that were under the purview of the Ministry of Finance, Economic Stabilization and National Policies have been brought under the Ministry of Investment Promotion through an amended Gazette Extraordinary. Accordingly, the Board of Investment, the Export Development Board and the Port City Commission, which were under the Ministry of Finance, have been placed under the Ministry of Investment Promotion. The Ministry of Investment Promotion continues to remain under the purview of President Wickremesinghe, as no cabinet minister has been appointed for that portfolio. That was economic news, and now let's move on to the weather report. The Weather Met Department says that mainly fair weather will prevail over the island today. That was the weather report, and before we conclude this bulletin of news, let's get back to the headlines once again. The Registrar General of Pest Control vehemently rejects the newspaper reports published recently that stocks of toxic rice have been imported to Sri Lanka. The government has declared tomorrow a day of mourning and a public holiday in view of Queen Elizabeth II's state funeral. Local government elections to be held before the 20th of March next year. Ownerless stray cattle are to be captured and handed over to NLDB farms. And in news overseas, Princess William and Harry lead historic coffin vigil. And in sports news, Cricket India is to introduce tactical substitutions inside Mushtaq Ali Trophy T20s next month. And with that, we conclude the bulletin of news.